The training station floated in the darkness of space like a massive metal flower. Inside, hundreds of aliens from different worlds prepared for their military service. The Galactic Confederation required every soldier to complete virtual reality training before they could serve in the defense forces. The system was simple and safe. Everyone said so. Instructor Velthar walked through the training hall with his usual confidence. He was a tall reptilian creature with green scales and yellow eyes. He had trained thousands of recruits over his long career. Today was no different, or so he thought. A new group of trainees waited for their orientation, and among them stood a human named Daiho. Velthar looked at Daiho without much interest. Humans were new to the Confederation. Earth had joined only 5 years ago, and not many people knew much about them. They seemed average in every way. Not particularly strong, not particularly fast, not particularly smart. Just another species trying to find their place among the stars. Listen carefully. Velthar began his standard speech. The combat simulator has 3 difficulty modes. Tutorial mode is for beginners. Standard mode is for regular training. Expert mode is for advanced warriors. Most of you will use tutorial or standard mode. Expert mode is very difficult. Very few ever complete it. Daiho listened quietly. He stood near the back of the group watching everything with careful eyes. He was young, maybe 25 in Earth years, with dark hair and a calm face that gave nothing away. His uniform was clean and properly worn. Nothing about him suggested he would change everything. After the orientation, the trainees moved toward the simulation pods. Each pod looked like a smooth white egg that could hold one person. Inside, neural interfaces would connect to the trainee's brain and create a perfect virtual reality. It was perfectly safe. The system had safety protocols, pain limiters, and psychological buffers. No one could really get hurt. Daiho approached his assigned pod and stopped. Something on the interface screen caught his attention. Below the 3 standard difficulty options, there was a 4th setting. It was grayed out and barely visible, like someone had tried to erase it but failed. The label read, Real Mode. He stared at those words for a long moment. Real Mode, what did that mean? Why was it hidden? He looked around and saw that none of the other trainees noticed it on their screens. Maybe it only appeared on some pods. Maybe it was a mistake. Instructor Velthar, Daiho called out. What is real mode? The entire training hall went silent. Every alien head turned toward Daiho. Velthar's scales went pale, which was something Daiho had never seen before. The instructor rushed over to look at the screen. That should not be there, Velthar said slowly. His voice carried something that might have been fear. Real mode has been disabled for thousands of years. It was used during the predecessor wars when simulations could control actual weapons in real battles. The mode removes all safety protocols, all pain limiters, all psychological buffers. If you die in real mode, your body lives, but your mind... He trailed off. It can cause permanent damage. Why would anyone create something like that? Daiho asked. Because war is not a game, Velthar answered. Real mode was designed to prepare warriors for actual combat. But it was too dangerous. Too many soldiers went insane or suffered brain damage. The Confederation banned it after the wars ended. I will report this glitch to maintenance immediately. The instructor walked away, already speaking into his communication device. The other trainees moved on to their training sessions. Soon Daiho stood alone in front of his pod. He looked at the screen again. The real mode option was still there, glowing faintly in the dim light. He thought about what Velthar had said. Too dangerous. Permanent damage. Banned for thousands of years. Every logical part of his brain told him to choose tutorial mode like everyone else. Start safe. Learn slowly. Don't take unnecessary risks. But another part of his brain, the part that made humans climb mountains and dive into oceans and fly into space, that part whispered a different message. What if you could do it? What if you could complete something that no one has done in thousands of years? Don't you want to know what you're really capable of? Daiho reached out and touched the real mode option. The screen immediately filled with warnings. Red text appeared in 17 different languages. Danger. Real mode removes all safety protocols. Neural damage possible. Psychological trauma likely. Death simulation will feel completely real. Are you sure? He pressed yes. Another warning appeared. He pressed yes again. 9 times the system asked him to confirm. 9 times he said yes. His hand was steady. His heart beat fast, but his mind was clear. He was choosing this with full knowledge of the risks. The pod opened with a soft hiss. Deho climbed inside and lay down. The neural interface lowered onto his head, and thin wires connected to his temples. The pod closed, sealing him in darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality exploded around him. The transition into real mode was nothing like the gentle dream that other trainees described. It felt like being thrown into ice water while someone screamed in his ears, every sense amplified to painful levels. He could smell everything: ozone, metal, something burning in the distance. He could feel everything: rough concrete under his hands, heavy armor weighing on his shoulders, sweat running down his back. Deho opened his eyes and found himself in a ruined city. Buildings stood like broken teeth against a red sky. Smoke drifted through empty streets. Somewhere in the distance, explosions rumbled like thunder. He looked down and saw he was wearing combat armor and holding a rifle. The weapon felt real. It had weight. It had texture. When he checked the ammunition counter, it showed 30 rounds. That was all. A message appeared in his vision written in cold white letters. Scenario: Defense of Krell City. Enemy forces: 50 mechanized assault units. Mission: survive. Time limit: 4 hours. 50 enemies. 1 rifle. 30 bullets. 4 hours. The math was simple and terrible. In the control room outside the simulation, Belthar was reviewing routine training data when an alarm caught his attention. One of the pods showed neural activity levels far beyond normal parameters. He pulled up the details and his blood ran cold. Pod 17? That was Deho's pod, and the mode setting showed real mode active. No, Belthar whispered. He rushed to the emergency controls and tried to abort the simulation. The system refused. A message appeared. Real mode cannot be interrupted, emergency. Abort would cause catastrophic neural feedback. Subject must complete scenario or accept. Mission failure. Other instructors noticed the commotion and gathered around. They looked at the neural readings with growing horror. The human's brain was being subjected to stress levels that would kill most species. His pain receptors were fully active. His fear response was completely engaged. He was experiencing war, real war, inside his mind. How long has he been in there? Someone asked. 4 minutes, Belthar answered. He has 3 hours and 56 minutes remaining. He will not survive, another instructor said with certainty. No one survives real mode. That is why it was banned. But Belthar was not so sure. He had noticed something about humans during their short time in the Confederation. They were stubborn in ways that seemed almost insane. They took risks that other species avoided. They pushed themselves beyond reasonable limits. Maybe, just maybe, this human named Deho would prove everyone wrong. Inside the simulation, Deho heard the sound of metal footsteps approaching. The enemy had found him. His first real test was about to begin. He checked his rifle one more time, found cover behind a collapsed wall, and waited. His hands shook slightly. His mouth was dry. Fear ran through his veins like electricity. But he did not run. He did not quit. He stayed in position and prepared to fight. Because that was what humans did. They faced impossible situations and found a way forward. They always had. From the caves of ancient Earth to the stars of the galaxy, humans survived by refusing to accept defeat. The first enemy unit appeared around the corner. It was a machine 8 feet tall, covered in armor plating with weapons built into both arms. It moved with mechanical precision, scanning for targets. Its sensors locked onto Deho's position almost immediately. A plasma bolt screamed through the air. Deho threw himself sideways. The bolt missed his head by inches. He felt the heat singe his hair. He felt the impact as he hit the ground. He felt pain shoot through his ribs. All of it was real. All of it was happening. He rolled behind better cover and returned fire. 3 shots. The first 2 bounced off the machine's armor. The third found a weak point in the knee joint. The enemy unit stumbled but did not fall. It returned fire again, and Deho had to move. This was going to be a very long 4 hours. Deho ran through the ruined streets with death chasing him. 3 enemy machines followed close behind, their metal feet pounding the concrete like drums. Every few seconds, plasma bolts screamed past his head. One hit the wall beside him and exploded, showering him with hot fragments. He felt each piece cut into his skin. The pain was absolutely real. He had been in the simulation for 30 minutes, and he had learned several important facts. First, these machines were fast and smart. They used actual military tactics, not the simple patterns that training enemies used. Second, his rifle could damage them, but only if he hit weak points in their joints or sensors. Third, he was going to run out of ammunition very soon if he did not find another way. Daeho spotted a half-collapsed building ahead. The doorway was narrow. He sprinted toward it and dove inside just as another plasma bolt scorched the air where he had been standing. The three machines reached the doorway and tried to follow. Their wide bodies could not fit through easily. They had to come through one at a time. This was what Daeho had been waiting for. He pulled the power cell from his rifle and worked quickly with shaking hands. His father had been an engineer on Earth, and Daeho had learned some basic skills as a child. He hoped those lessons would work here. He connected two wires, set the power cell to overload, and threw it at the doorway just as the first machine pushed through. The explosion was not huge, but it was enough. The blast wave knocked the first machine backward into the other two. They stumbled and fell in a tangle of metal limbs. Daeho did not wait to see if they would get up. He grabbed a weapon from a destroyed machine he had passed earlier and ran deeper into the building. In the control room, more instructors had gathered around the monitors. Word had spread through the station that a human was attempting real mode. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they did not believe it was possible. Now they watched in silence as Daeho fought for his life against impossible odds. He is adapting, one instructor said with surprise. He learns from each encounter and changes his tactics. His neural readings are still in the danger zone, another added. The stress is enormous. Most beings would have lost consciousness by now. Velthar said nothing. He simply watched and worried. The human had destroyed 7 enemy units so far, but 43 remained, and Daeho was wounded. The medical sensors showed cuts, burns, and impact trauma. In real mode, all of that translated into pain signals that the human's brain processed as completely real. How was he still moving? A young woman burst into the control room. Her name was Hyejin, and she was another human trainee. She had heard about what Daeho was doing and came as fast as she could. She and Daeho had traveled from Earth together. They had become friends during the long journey to the training station. "Pull him out," Hyejin demanded. "This is insane. He is going to get permanent brain damage." "We cannot," Velthar explained again. "Real mode must run its full course. If we force an abort now, the neural shock could kill him. All we can do is watch and hope." Hyejin stared at the screen showing Daeho's vital signs. His heart rate was elevated but steady. His brain activity showed patterns she did not understand, but she knew Daeho. He was stubborn. Once he committed to something, he saw it through to the end. That quality had gotten him into trouble on Earth more than once. Now it might get him killed, even if his body survived. Inside the simulation, Daeho moved through the ruins like a ghost. He had learned to use the environment as a weapon. When 5 machines cornered him in a narrow alley, he shot out the supports of a damaged building. Tons of rubble crashed down, burying 3 of them. When 2 more tracked him to a chemical storage facility, he ignited a leak that engulfed them in flames, but the victories came at a cost. Each fight left him more exhausted. Each wound added to his growing collection of injuries. He was covered in blood now, both real and simulated. His left arm was burned from the chemical fire. His ribs were probably cracked from a close-range blast. Every breath hurt. Time became strange. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. Daeho lost track of how long he had been fighting. He only knew that he had to keep moving. Stop moving, and he died. It was that simple. The enemy machines were changing their tactics too. They learned from their losses. They stopped chasing him into obvious traps. They began to coordinate their attacks better, forcing him into kill zones where escape was nearly impossible. The simulation's artificial intelligence was adapting, just like a real military force would adapt. Daeho found himself with his back against a wall, literally and figuratively. 7 machines surrounded him in a wide plaza. There was no cover nearby, no buildings to collapse, no convenient explosions to trigger. Just open ground and 7 enemies who had learned to be cautious. He checked his current weapon. 5 shots remaining, 7 enemies. The math did not work in his favor. but humans had never been good at accepting bad math. Deho looked around the plaza with desperate focus. There had to be something. There was always something. His eyes landed on a damaged water tower on the edge of the plaza. It was leaning dangerously, held up by a single support beam. Not much, but maybe enough. He ran, not away from the enemies, but toward the water tower. The machines opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts stitched the ground around his feet. One caught his leg and he stumbled, nearly fell, but kept running. Pain screamed through his body, but he ignored it. He had become very good at ignoring pain over the past hours. Deho reached the support beam and fired all 5 remaining shots into it. The beam cracked, held for one moment, then gave way. The entire water tower toppled like a falling tree. Thousands of gallons of water crashed down onto the plaza, and the machines disappeared under the wave. Water and metal and debris mixed together in a roaring chaos. When the dust settled, 5 of the 7 machines were destroyed. The other 2 were damaged but still functional. Deho had no weapon now, no ammunition, nothing but his hands and his stubborn refusal to quit. He picked up a piece of metal rebar from the rubble. It was not much of a weapon, but it would have to do. The 2 remaining machines approached him slowly. They knew he was finished. They could take their time. Deho waited until they were close. Then he did something that the machine's programming did not expect. He attacked. He charged straight at the nearest machine and slammed the rebar into its sensor array with all his remaining strength. The machine's vision went dark. It flailed blindly, and Deho used those few seconds to grab a weapon from its mounting. He turned and fired point-blank into the last machine's power core. The explosion knocked him backward. He landed hard and did not get up immediately. His body had reached its limit. But when he looked around, all the enemies were destroyed. A message appeared in his vision. Scenario complete, time 3 hours 47 minutes. Enemies defeated 50-50, mission status success. The simulation released him. The ruined city faded away. The pain faded to a dull ache. Deho found himself lying in the pod, covered in sweat, shaking like a leaf in the wind. The pod opened slowly. Velthar and Hyjin were there immediately. They helped him out of the pod. Deho's legs barely held him. He looked like he had been through a war, even though his body had no real injuries. The war had been in his mind, but his mind believed it had been real. "You completed it," Velthar said in a voice filled with disbelief. "You actually completed real mode. In 10,000 years of Confederation history, across 847 different species, no one has ever done that before. You are the first." Deho tried to speak but found his mouth too dry. Hyjin brought him water and he drank gratefully. Finally, he managed to say, "That was the hardest thing I have ever done." "Why did you do it?" Hyjin asked. There were tears in her eyes, though whether from relief or anger, Deho could not tell. He thought about the question. Why had he chosen real mode? Why had he pushed himself to the edge of what his mind could endure? The answer came to him slowly, but when it came, it felt true. "Because it was there," he said simply. "Because I wanted to know if I could. Because humans do not walk away from challenges just because they are dangerous." The other instructors in the control room exchanged glances. They had trained thousands of soldiers from hundreds of worlds. They thought they understood what made warriors, but this human had just taught them something new. Sometimes the most dangerous warrior was not the strongest or the fastest. Sometimes it was the one who simply refused to give up, no matter what. News of Deho's achievement spread through the station like fire. By evening, everyone knew that a human had completed real mode. Some called it impressive. Some called it insane. But no one could deny what had happened. The humans, the new species that everyone had dismissed as average, had just done something impossible. And in the darkness of space, in places far from the training station, other beings heard the news and wondered what it meant. Earth had sent its children to the stars. Those children were proving to be far more dangerous than anyone had expected. Admiral Taeyang arrived at the training station 3 days after Deho's real mode victory. She was one of the few humans who held a senior position in the Confederation military. She had earned her rank through 20 years of service. fighting in the border skirmishes and proving herself again and again. She knew what it meant to be underestimated. She found Deho in the station's observation deck. He was staring out at the stars, still recovering from the neural strain. He stood when he saw her approach, but she waved him back down. "Relax, soldier. This is not a formal visit." She sat beside him and looked out at the same stars. "I read the reports about what you did. Impressive and incredibly stupid." "Yes, Admiral," Deho agreed. He had heard the same assessment from several people over the past days. "Do you know what you have done?" Taeyang asked. "You have changed how the entire Confederation sees humans. For 5 years we have been the new species, the unknowns. We were average at everything, so people mostly ignored us. Now they cannot ignore us anymore. Is that a bad thing?" "It can be." Taeyang turned to look at him directly. "The Confederation has existed for 10,000 years. Every species has their place in the hierarchy. That place is based on what they can do better than others. If humans start showing capabilities that threaten those established positions, we will make enemies." Powerful enemies, Deho thought about that. He had not considered the political implications of his actions. He had just wanted to test himself to see what was possible. But nothing happened in a vacuum. Every action had consequences. "What should I do?" he asked. "Keep your head down. Complete your training quietly. Try not to do anything else that makes people talk about humans." She stood to leave, then paused. "But I am proud of what you did. You showed them that humans belong among the stars. Just be careful. The galaxy is not always kind to those who stand out." After she left, Deho tried to follow her advice. He attended his regular training sessions. He completed his exercises. He tried to be invisible, but the other trainees would not let him disappear. They all knew what he had done. Some looked at him with respect. Others looked at him with suspicion. A few looked at him with open hostility. One of those hostile looks came from Krathnor, a warrior from the insectoid Vexar hives. The Vexar were one of the most feared combat species in the Confederation. They had natural armor plating, superior strength, and reflexes honed by evolution on a brutal high-gravity world. Krathnor had won every sparring match since arriving at the station. He considered himself the best warrior in his training class. The confrontation came during a routine combat exercise. Deho was paired with another human named Yunji against Krathnor in a standard mode simulation. The scenario was simple urban combat. Yunji was skilled and confident. She had scored high on all her tactical assessments. But against Krathnor, skill did not matter much. The Vexar warrior moved through the simulation like a force of nature. His armored body shrugged off hits that would have disabled humans. His strikes were devastating. Within 3 minutes, both Deho and Yunji were eliminated. They lay on the virtual ground, staring up at Krathnor's insect-like face. "Weak," Krathnor clicked in his species language. The translation came through their neural links. "Humans are weak. Your victories mean nothing. In real combat, you would die quickly." Yunji's face flushed with anger. She climbed out of her pod after the simulation ended and walked straight to Krathnor. "Say that again." The Vexar warrior looked down at her. He was twice her size and covered in natural armor. "Humans are weak," he repeated slowly. "You have no strength. No speed, no armor. You survive only because the Confederation protects you." "Then prove it," Yunji said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clenched into fists. "Fight me in expert mode. Just you and me. We will see who is weak." The other trainees in the hall went silent. Challenging someone to expert mode was serious. It was not done casually. Krathnor's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. "Very well, tomorrow. Expert mode. I will show everyone that humans are not as dangerous as they pretend to be." Deho pulled Yunji aside after Krathnor left. "That was not smart. Expert mode is brutal even for Vexar warriors." "He has every advantage." "I know," Yunji said, "but I am tired of being dismissed. I am tired of aliens thinking humans are weak. Someone needs to show them otherwise. You could get seriously hurt. Expert mode does not remove all the safety protocols like real mode, but the pain is still very real. And Krathnor is good. Very good." Yunji looked at him with determination in her eyes. "So help me beat him. You completed real mode. You must have learned something. Teach me." They spent that evening studying recordings of Krathnor's previous matches. Heejin joined them, and together they analyzed the Vexar warrior's fighting style. He was strong and fast, but he followed predictable patterns. He relied on his natural advantages and rarely adapted his tactics. "Here," Daho pointed at a moment in one recording. He always strikes high when he has an opponent cornered. He assumes his reach and height are unbeatable. If you could bait him into that position and go low instead, he would miss and be off balance, Yunji finished. But I would need to time it perfectly. One mistake and I am done. They worked through the night, developing strategies that played to human advantages. Humans were not stronger or faster than Vexar, but they were adaptable. They could change tactics mid-fight. They could use their environment creatively. They could endure pain and keep fighting when others would quit. The next day, the entire training station seemed to know about the match. Hundreds of recruits from dozens of species crowded into the observation gallery. They wanted to see this confrontation between the Vexar warrior and the human who dared challenge him. Belthar supervised the simulation setup with obvious worry. He had grown to respect the humans, especially after watching Daiho's real mode victory. But expert mode was dangerous, and Yunji was not as experienced as she pretended to be. He hoped this would not end badly. The scenario loaded. It was a zero-gravity industrial facility with multiple levels and limited cover. Neither species had a natural advantage in this environment. Yunji and Krathnor materialized at opposite ends of the facility. The match began. Krathnor launched himself through the zero-gravity space with practiced ease. He moved like he was born to fight in these conditions. Within seconds, he closed the distance to Yunji and struck with devastating force. His clawed limb punched through a metal wall where her head had been a moment before. Yunji dodged and retreated. She was not trying to fight him directly. She was leading him deeper into the facility, toward the section with exposed power conduits. Krathnor followed confidently, certain of his eventual victory. When they reached the right location, Yunji did something unexpected. She shot one of the power conduits deliberately. The electrical discharge cascaded through the facility's systems, disrupting the magnetic positioning fields that helped with zero-gravity navigation. The sudden loss of reference points disoriented both fighters, but it affected Krathnor more severely. His fighting style depended on perfect spatial awareness. When that awareness vanished, he flailed and struggled to reorient himself. Yunji, who had trained specifically for this moment, adapted faster. She used the brief window to strike at the weak points between his armor plates that Daho had helped her identify. The match became a grinding test of endurance. Krathnor was stronger, but Yunji was more adaptable. He had natural armor, but she knew where it was vulnerable. He relied on proven tactics, but she kept changing her approach. 20 minutes into the match, Krathnor began to slow. His species had evolved for short, intense bursts of activity, not prolonged combat. Yunji, descended from humans who hunted prey by simply chasing it until it collapsed from exhaustion, kept her pace steady. 30 minutes in, she finally found her opening. Krathnor made the mistake she had been waiting for. He cornered her and struck high, just like in the recordings. Yunji went low instead, sliding under his attack. She grabbed his leg joint and twisted with all her strength. The armor plate separated from the joint, exposing the soft tissue beneath. Her next strike went directly into that weakness. Krathnor fell. The simulation registered him as eliminated. Yunji floated in the zero gravity, breathing hard, covered in simulated injuries but victorious. The observation gallery erupted in noise. Some aliens cheered, others argued in disbelief. A few simply stared in shock. The Vexar warrior had been defeated by a human. The so-called weak species had won. Velthar sat back in his chair, his scales displaying colors that indicated deep thought. First, Daho had completed real mode. Now Yunji had defeated a Vexar warrior in expert mode. Twice in 1 week, humans had done what should have been impossible. The pattern was clear. Humans were not average. They were something else entirely. Something the Confederation had not seen before. That night, Admiral Taeyang received a classified message from Confederation High Command. The message was short. We need to understand human capabilities. Authorize full evaluation protocols immediately. The Admiral read the message 3 times. She knew what it meant. The Confederation was no longer content to simply observe humans. They wanted to test them systematically. They wanted to know exactly what Earth's children were capable of. She wondered if that was good news or a warning of trouble to come. She sent her approval and added a note. Handle them carefully. Humans are more dangerous when they are cornered. The evaluation team arrived at Training Station Kepler 9 1 week after Yunji's victory. They came in an unmarked transport ship, moving with the quiet efficiency of people on an important mission. Director Nalvoth led the team. She was a member of the Mindari Collective, a species known for their telepathic abilities and analytical minds. She had spent 200 years studying military psychology across the galaxy. Director Nalvoth gathered all 23 human trainees in a conference room. She looked at each of them with eyes that seemed to see more than just physical bodies. Her telepathic senses picked up emotions, stress patterns, and hidden thoughts. What she sensed from these humans troubled her. "You have attracted attention," she began without introduction. "High Command wants to understand what makes humans capable of achievements that other species find impossible. We will conduct a series of tests over the next 2 weeks. These tests will push you to your limits. Some of you may not complete them. Do you understand?" The humans nodded. Deho noticed that none of them seemed afraid. Nervous, yes. Uncertain, perhaps. But not afraid. That was interesting. Most species showed fear when facing unknown tests. Humans showed curiosity mixed with determination. The testing began the next day. Every human trainee was subjected to increasingly difficult scenarios across all simulation modes. The evaluation team watched and recorded everything. They measured reaction times, decision-making patterns, stress responses, and adaptation rates. The results confirmed what Director Nalvoth suspected. Humans were not exceptional in any single category. Their strength was average. Their speed was average. Their reflexes fell within normal ranges for carbon-based life forms. But when all factors combined under stress, something remarkable happened. Humans adapted faster than any species she had studied. They found creative solutions to problems that stumped others. They kept fighting long after logic said they should quit. They show every marker of evolutionary desperation, Nalvoth explained to her team during a review meeting. This is a species that survived multiple extinction-level events on their homeworld. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues. They evolved in an environment that constantly tried to kill them. That kind of pressure creates specific traits: stubbornness, creativity, an almost pathological refusal to accept defeat. "Are they dangerous?" one team member asked. "Potentially," Nalvoth answered carefully. "But danger can be useful if properly directed. The question is whether the Confederation can work with humans or whether we must limit their influence." She decided to conduct one final test, a special challenge that would show exactly what humans could do when pushed to their absolute limits. She selected 3 humans for this test: Daiho, Yunji, and a quiet young man named Minho, who had scored highest on tactical assessment exams. The 3 humans were brought to a briefing room where Director Nalvoth waited with several senior officers. A large screen showed details of what she called the Cascade Protocol. "This simulation has never been defeated," Nalvoth explained. "It was originally designed to test artificial intelligence response systems. The scenario constantly changes. Victory conditions shift, enemies adapt in real time. Resources decrease with every minute. The longest any team has survived is 47 minutes. Most give up within 20 minutes. We want to see how long you can last." Minho studied the screen carefully. His analytical mind was already working through the challenge. "What happens if we somehow complete all the objectives?" "That would be unprecedented," Nalvoth said. "But if you do, you will have proven something important about your species." The 3 humans were given 1 hour to prepare. They gathered in a small planning room and immediately began analyzing the challenge. Minho took charge of strategy naturally. His mind worked like a computer, processing variables and calculating probabilities. "The key is adaptability," he said. "We cannot plan for every possibility because the scenario changes. We need to establish principles instead of specific tactics. Yunji, you handle combat decisions. Deho, you focus on creative problem-solving when we hit impossible situations. I will manage overall strategy and resource allocation." They spent the full hour discussing contingencies, establishing communication protocols, and mentally preparing for what was coming. When the time came, they entered their simulation pods without hesitation. The Cascade Protocol began simply. The 3 humans found themselves in a colony under attack by raiders. The first objective appeared: defend the civilians until reinforcements arrive. They established defensive positions, coordinated their fire, and repelled the first wave efficiently. Then the cascade began. A new objective replaced the first: evacuate the civilians because reinforcements are not coming. They adapted quickly, securing transport ships while maintaining defense. Then another change. The transport ships are sabotaged and need repairs under fire. Then another. The enemy has called for their own reinforcements. In the observation room, dozens of officers watched the screens in silence. The humans were performing far beyond expectations. They did not panic when objectives changed. They did not hesitate when new threats appeared. They simply adapted and kept moving forward. Director Nalvoth watched with particular interest. She saw patterns in how the humans worked together. They communicated efficiently with minimal words. They trusted each other to handle their responsibilities. Most importantly, they showed no attachment to established doctrine. When standard tactics failed, they invented new ones instantly. 30 minutes into the simulation, the scenario reached nightmare difficulty. The colony was surrounded. Ammunition was nearly gone. Enemies were breaching the perimeter from 3 directions. Any rational team would accept defeat at this point. Instead, Daiho made a suggestion that seemed insane. We stop defending and attack their command center. That is suicide, Yunji pointed out. We are outnumbered and almost out of ammunition. Exactly, Daiho said. Which is why they will not expect it. Minho, can you hack their communications if we get close to their ship? Minho ran calculations in his head. Maybe if we can reach it, if I have enough time, if 100 other things go right. Good enough, Daiho decided. Let's go. They abandoned the colony's defenses and struck directly at the enemy command structure. It was tactically reckless. It violated every principle of defensive warfare. But it worked precisely because it was unexpected. The enemy forces were programmed to counter rational tactics. They did not know how to respond to opponents who embraced calculated recklessness. The confusion gave the humans the opening they needed. They fought their way to the enemy command ship with desperate intensity. Minho reached the ship's communication system and began hacking. His fingers flew across the interface while Yunji and Daiho held off pursuing enemies with their last remaining ammunition. Sweat poured down Minho's face as he worked through layers of security. Got it, he finally said. He broadcast false retreat orders across the enemy network. The raider forces, receiving what they thought were legitimate commands, began withdrawing. In the chaos, the humans secured an enemy transport, loaded the civilians, and escaped. The simulation timer stopped at 1 hour and 53 minutes. The message appeared. All objectives completed. Unprecedented result. When the pods opened, the 3 humans emerged exhausted but conscious. They had more than doubled the previous survival record. They had not just survived, they had won. The observation room was absolutely silent. Officers from a dozen species stared at the screens in disbelief. Finally, Admiral Taeyang, who had been watching remotely, allowed herself a small smile. Her species had just proved they belonged among the stars in a way that no one could deny. Director Nalvoth approached the 3 humans. Her telepathic senses read their emotional states. Exhaustion, pride, but also something else. A willingness to do whatever was necessary to achieve their goals. That quality made them valuable. It also made them potentially dangerous. Impressive, she said carefully. Tell me, what were you willing to sacrifice to achieve victory? Minho answered without hesitation. Whatever was necessary. The director nodded slowly. That answer confirmed her assessment. Humans were capable of extraordinary achievements, but they were also capable of extraordinary ruthlessness when they believed the cause was justified. The Confederation would need to remember that. That evening, Daiho stood on the observation deck again looking at the stars. He felt different than he had a month ago. He had proven himself in real mode. He had helped Yunji prepare for her victory. He had completed the Cascade Protocol, but he also felt a weight he had not carried before. The galaxy was watching humans now, judging them, trying to understand them, and Daiho was not sure if that attention was a good thing. Humans had always been at their best when they were underdogs, when no one expected them to succeed. What happened when the galaxy knew what humans were capable of? Would they still have that advantage? Hejin joined him at the window. They stood together in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, she spoke. We changed everything, didn't we? Yes, Daiho agreed. For better or worse, we showed them who humans are. Now we have to live with the consequences. Before either of them could say more, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. Admiral Taeyang's voice came over every speaker. All personnel to combat stations. This is not a drill. Unknown hostile forces approaching the station. Estimated time to contact 30 minutes. Daeho and Heejin looked at each other. The simulation was over. Real war was about to begin. The training station transformed from a place of learning into a war zone in minutes. Thousands of recruits and instructors rushed through corridors, heading to assigned positions. Alarm bells echoed through every section. Emergency doors sealed automatically. Everyone knew this was serious. Admiral Taeyang stood in the operations center, staring at tactical displays that showed 15 dark ships approaching from a warp anomaly. The ships were sleek and dangerous looking, unlike any design in the Confederation database. She tried hailing them multiple times. No response. Only silence followed by targeting locks. Hostile intent confirmed, her tactical officer reported. They are weapons hot and closing fast. Time until the defense fleet arrives? Taeyang asked. 3 hours, Admiral. They are pushing engines beyond safe limits but cannot get here faster. 3 hours. The hostile ships would reach the station in 30 minutes. That left 2.5 hours where the training station would face 15 warships alone. The station had minimal defensive capabilities. It was never designed for actual combat. Director Nalvoth entered the operations center with urgency. We must begin evacuation immediately. The station cannot withstand a sustained assault from that many warships. Taeyang looked at the evacuation calculations on her screen. They had 4,000 personnel and not enough transport capacity to move everyone before the hostiles arrived. If they ran, hundreds would die trapped in the station. She made her decision quickly. Negative. We are not evacuating. We are defending the station. That is suicide, Nalvoth said flatly. Maybe, Taeyang agreed. But it is suicide where we control the terms. Better than dying while running. She opened station-wide communications. All personnel with combat training report to the main hangar. We need volunteers for a defensive operation. The response was immediate. Dozens of officers and instructors rushed to the hangar. Velthar arrived first, his scales set in combat colors. Other species followed. Warriors from 8 different worlds all ready to fight despite the impossible odds. Then something unexpected happened. Every single human at the station volunteered. All 23 trainees, including those who had barely completed orientation. They stood together in a group, young and inexperienced but absolutely determined. Taeyang looked at them with mixed pride and concern. This is not a simulation. Real weapons. Real death. Real consequences. Are you sure? Daeho stepped forward. We are sure, Admiral. Humans do not run from impossible fights. You know that. She did know that. It was what made humans both valuable and terrifying to other species. She nodded and turned to her tactical display. The station had 12 light interceptor craft in the hangar. They were designed for asteroid surveys, not combat. Against 15 military warships, they would be destroyed quickly, unless they were used in a way that no one expected. Taeyang outlined her plan to the assembled volunteers. It was bold to the point of insanity. They would use the station itself as a weapon. The training simulators required massive amounts of power to operate. If they overloaded that power grid in a controlled manner, they could generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disable unshielded ships. The problem was timing and positioning. Someone needed to be connected to the simulator pods during the discharge to control the pulse precisely. The neural feedback would be enormous. It could cause permanent brain damage or worse. Minho immediately understood the technical requirements. We need multiple people to distribute the load. At least 20 connection points to handle the power surge safely. Even then, the neural feedback will be... He paused, searching for the right word. Significant. How significant? Hyunji asked. Real mode was painful, Daeho said quietly. This will be worse. Much worse, the humans looked at each other. Then one by one they volunteered. All 23 of them. They would turn themselves into living parts of a weapon system, risking their minds to save people they barely knew. Velthar watched this with something that might have been awe. In all his years training warriors from hundreds of species, he had never seen anything quite like this. Humans were either the bravest species he had met or the craziest. Possibly both. The plan went into motion with 15 minutes until the hostile ships reached weapon range. The human trainees entered the simulator pods, now rewired into a massive electromagnetic weapon. The alien officers and instructors evacuated to shielded interior sections. The 12 interceptor craft launched under Admiral Tai Yang's command. Yejin strapped into a gunner seat on one of the interceptors. Beside her, Velthar piloted the craft with steady hands. He glanced at her. "Your species will either save us all or get us all killed." "Probably both," Hyejin said with a tight smile. The interceptors formed a defensive screen around the station. They looked pathetic against the approaching warships, like children with toys facing professional soldiers. But their job was not to win a ship-to-ship battle. Their job was to keep the enemy focused on them while the real trap prepared. The hostile fleet opened fire at extreme range. Their weapons were devastatingly powerful. Beams of energy sliced through space, cutting through interceptor shields like paper. 2 craft were disabled in the first exchange. Their pilots barely managed to eject before the ships exploded. Tai Yang ordered evasive maneuvers. The interceptors scattered, weaving through space in chaotic patterns. They returned fire with their light weapons, doing almost no damage but keeping the hostiles' attention.
3 more interceptors went down.
The station began taking hits too. Hull sections vented atmosphere into space. Inside the rewired simulator pods, the humans felt the power building. It flowed through their neural connections like fire in their veins. The pain started small but grew rapidly as the capacitors charged. Several trainees screamed. Others clenched their teeth and endured in silence. Daiho was connected to the primary control node. He felt not just his own pain but echoes of pain from the other 22 humans in the network. His vision blurred. His hands shook. Blood ran from his nose, but he kept his focus on the charge level display that was projected directly into his brain. 80%, 90%. The hostile ships moved into optimal range, confident in their technological superiority. They prepared to deliver a final devastating attack that would crack the station open like an egg. 95%. Daiho's world had narrowed to nothing but numbers and pain. He could barely think, could barely breathe. But he held on because 22 other humans were depending on him. Because thousands of people on the station were depending on him. Because humans did not quit. 100%. "Now," Tai Yang's voice cut through the chaos. Daiho triggered the discharge. 23 human minds channeled an electromagnetic pulse that ripped through local space like an invisible tsunami. Every electronic system within 200 kilometers crashed simultaneously. The hostile ships went dark, their engines dying, their weapons offline, their systems completely dead. The interceptors went dark too, tumbling through space without power. The station's auxiliary systems flickered and failed. For a moment, silence filled the void. Then the Confederation Defense Fleet emerged from warp, having pushed their engines to the breaking point to arrive early. They found a battlefield frozen in place, a disabled hostile fleet, a damaged but intact training station, and 23 humans being rushed to medical bays with severe neural trauma. Daiho woke 3 days later in a white medical room. His head felt like someone had used it for drum practice. A doctor, some species he did not recognize, checked his vital signs and assured him he would recover fully. They told him about the aftermath. The hostile fleet had been identified as scouts from the Talreth Dominion, an aggressive civilization that had been attacking Confederation border colonies for months. The captured ships provided intelligence that could save billions of lives. Director Nalvoth visited him on the 4th day. She sat beside his bed and studied him with her telepathic senses. "You continue to surprise us, human. High Command was concerned about your species' capabilities. After this, we remain concerned, but we are also grateful. You proved that humans do not just survive impossible situations. You transform them into victories. At what cost?" Daiho asked. His voice was rough from disuse. "All 23 humans will recover physically," Nalvoth assured him. "Neural damage was significant but temporary. More importantly, you have changed how the Confederation sees your species. We are implementing new combat doctrines based on human approaches to warfare. Not everyone is happy about this. You have disrupted 10,000 years of established military hierarchy. But you reminded us why the Confederation exists, to combine our different strengths against threats no single species could face alone." Admiral Tai Yang visited next, bringing Yunji and Minho with her. Both were bandaged but mobile. They looked tired but proud. "The 23, Tai Yang said. "That is what they are calling you." The 23 humans who held the line when everyone else would have run. The Confederation is giving you all the Star of Valor. First time it has been awarded to an entire group at once. Deho did not care about medals. He asked the question that had been bothering him. The Talrith Dominion is still out there. They know about us now. They know what we can do. Yes, Taiyang admitted. And they will prepare for us next time. Our element of surprise is gone. Minho, always the analyst, saw the larger strategic picture. They will adapt. They will develop countermeasures. Our advantages will diminish. But Yunji had a different perspective. Let them prepare. Humans have been underestimated our entire existence, by predators on ancient Earth, by nature itself, by each other. We are still here because we adapt faster than anyone can prepare for us. Let the galaxy get ready for what humans can do. By the time they are ready, we will have already become something different. Several weeks later, after medical releases and formal ceremonies, Deho found himself back at the simulation facility. The pods had been repaired and restored to normal operation. He stood in front of his assigned pod, looking at the interface screen. 4 options displayed: tutorial, standard, expert, real mode. A technician noticed him standing there. We tried to remove that real mode option from the system, but it keeps reappearing. Like the simulation wants it to remain available. Deho smiled slightly. Maybe real mode was never a glitch. Maybe it had been waiting through millennia for a species that was brave enough, or crazy enough, to choose it. Humans had not just survived real mode, they had mastered it, and in doing so, they proved something important about themselves. New recruits began entering the facility for their training sessions. Several were humans from the newest transport from Earth. They had heard the stories about the 23, about real mode, about what humans could accomplish when everything was on the line. A young woman named Jiwoo approached Deho. She had read all the reports. She knew what he had done. Is it true? You really chose real mode on your first try? Deho looked at this newcomer. She carried that distinctive human quality, curiosity mixed with determination that both terrified and impressed other species. He remembered Admiral Taiyang's warnings about disrupting hierarchies. He thought about the Talrith Dominion and the challenges ahead. Yes, he answered simply. But understand what you risk before trying it yourself. Real mode tests more than your skills. It tests who you are. Jiwoo nodded seriously. Then she grinned. Good. I want to know who I really am. As she walked toward a pod, Deho realized that humanity's journey in the Confederation was just beginning. Earth's children were spreading across the stars, bringing their terrible and wonderful refusal to accept limitations. The galaxy would never be the same. In the observation room, Velthar watched Jiwoo prepare for her session. He sent a message to Admiral Taiyang. Another human is attempting real mode. Her response came quickly. Let her try. The galaxy needs to understand what humans are. Velthar agreed. Better the Confederation learned to work with human capabilities now, while they were allies. He pulled up Jiwoo's file and noted with interest that she specialized in unconventional warfare tactics. Of course she did. The simulation initialized. Jiwoo faced the same warnings that Deho had, and she confirmed each one without hesitation. Real mode engaged. Another human entered the trial that was supposed to be impossible, and somewhere in the vast networks of the Confederation systems, something stirred. Perhaps it was just complex algorithms responding to input, or perhaps after 10,000 years of training warriors to fight by established rules, the simulation had finally found a species worthy of its true capabilities. A species that did not just play the game but changed the rules entirely. The simulation was supposed to be safe, but humans had never been particularly interested in safety. They were interested in possibility, in testing boundaries, in discovering what existed beyond the warnings that other species accepted as absolute. Real mode was never truly disabled. It was waiting, and humanity finally arrived to show the galaxy what it was for.